My name is Nadia Ahmed. I'm a senior at Wakefield High School and one of the producers with Arlington Independent Media's Youth Journalism Initiative. If you stuck around for the whole season of the Arlington AMP, then I imagine you might be kind of curious about the backstory of how this podcast and how this whole youth program came together. Well, that's what this special bonus episode's for. Back in August of 2023, right as we were finishing up our summer podcast intensive at AIM, we put together a showcase where we talked about the program, and my fellow interns and I said a bunch of extremely brilliant and perceptive things about our reporting process. And lucky for you, we recorded it. So, in this special edition of the Arlington AMP, we'll go behind the scenes of AIM's Youth Journalism Initiative. Here's the episode.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming. If you have not been to this building before, this is Arlington Independent Media. We are a 40-year-old startup. We're a community media nonprofit. And something I want you to know, I want to give you a little bit background on kind of what our building is. So you've noticed we're in a very, very cool and fancy TV studio. There's like audio suites over there. And basically we exist to teach people in the community how to get the word out about things that they want to talk about, how to tell their own stories. And we give them the tools and the platforms to do that. So we have this cool little low power radio station that broadcasts all over Arlington. We have digital platforms all over the place. And then we've got a very retro, awesome cable channel. And we are kind of, let me see. Anybody familiar with Wayne's World? Okay, cool. That was my reference to community media before I got into this. But basically, we've been able to Robin Hood some money from the cable companies to do this really cool community grassroots thing. So this movement came out of like a lot of activism and community organizing because we realized the stories that are being told by big companies. And maybe we should be telling stories from real people on the ground who care about their neighborhoods and stuff. And so we've been doing this for 40 years. And I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of things have happened in 40 years. One of them is the absolute evisceration of the local news ecosystem. Newspapers basically don't exist anymore except from big companies. It's like 5 companies that own everything. And so that makes AIM, a place like AIM, really, really important. And so we have kind of post-pandemic come out swinging and reinventing ourselves and figuring out what is this organization supposed to look like in the 21st century? What are we doing here? So something that I want you to think about this evening is kind of this just question of why do local stories matter? Why do we tell local stories? So I should tell you a little bit about this program. This is the second iteration of a grand experiment that we're doing with local journalism with high schoolers. So the idea was, let's get some high schoolers out into their communities telling stories. It's a really big experiment. These guys have been in the trenches with me for the last 6 weeks. There is no syllabus because they are teaching me what the program is supposed to look like, which is very fun and cool because I'm learning a whole lot from them. I'm going to stop talking now. Actually, I've learned this lesson. I'm going to stop talking now and throw to these guys because they're smarter and cooler than me. And we're just going to hear some awesome tape from the wonderful projects that they made. And then we're gonna talk to them a little bit about that. So, okay.
My name is Rasidik Singh, but I go by Sid. And my first story was about was actually based on an artist here in Northern Virginia. We'll learn more about her, and specifically about a collective of similar artists who have based their art on their trauma and healing from that. And I feel like that sums it up.
It feels like we're living in a moment when people are dealing with mental health challenges and trauma on an unprecedented scale. I've always been interested in how art can serve as a tool for healing and self-expression. So when I learned about an art exhibition at George Mason University that was tackling that exact question, I knew I had to see it in person. In the exhibition, called Edges of What I Feel, artists are grappling in really visceral and personal ways with issues like chronic pain, trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, sexual assault, and domestic violence, and inviting viewers to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. For Arlington Independent Media, I'm Hirsadak Singh, and you're listening to the Arlington AMP podcast. In today's episode, I'll speak with Michelle Smith, an artist behind one of my favorite pieces in the exhibition. Michelle is one of the founding members of the Healing Artists Collective, the group of artists from George Mason that put this on. I had a chance to sit down with her and explore how her personal journey with grief and trauma has shaped her work. Michelle's piece in the exhibition is really striking. Imagine an empty white rocking chair with this huge metal spike hovering in the air over it, looking like it's just about to strike at any moment. Wound around the spike is a thin gold thread.
Great. So we're going to start with Michelle Smith talking about how the two things that you see, the rocking chairs was to symbolize comfort, and that the shard was just the impending collision of trauma, or just like a traumatic experience, but that there's still hope within that experience because you have a thin gold thread wound around the spike to show that even in the midst of something horrible, you can still find hope. You can still find something positive. Yes, I will. I will expand on that. So, her traumatic experience was the fact that she found her husband killed himself, and she was the one who found him. He was in the army, and she was his wife, and it was very traumatic considering they also had a 7-year-old daughter at that time, and it was just unimaginable to hear that loss, and that sense or whatever she was feeling at that time must have been unimaginable. But it was more interesting to me how she was able to shape that, or how that still has impacted her artistic journey till now. So this story was actually recorded, or I did it before the internship started, because I just wanted to get a jump start. And it was different because I also did a story while I was doing the internship, but that was separate. That was about restorative justice in Arlington. And I talked with one of the organization's CEO who are implementing restorative justice and restorative practices in Arlington. And so it was a much different experience because I feel like the restorative justice one, it was more policy based. It was like public officials, and there are a lot more factors that they need to consider. So it's so broad as well. So the questions, they have to be sometimes precise, because I'm sure we can all agree public officials tend to give broad answers. You know, they don't like to go into the specifics. But a reporter's job, like I'm sure all of like my fellow reporters learned, it's our job to get into specifics. It's our job to explain what people might not understand. And so that's what I learned from here. Considering Michelle, who was an amazing source for my first story, she was a lot more open, considering it was her personal experience, and the fact that she was able to speak about it so candidly was amazing because it helped viewers understand and empathize a lot better compared to if we were introduced as someone more guarded.
I remember the one thing that I wanted to say, which was that the thing that was really exciting is we didn't have a syllabus for this class, but what we did in fact end up with, it very much seems, is like a full season of podcast episodes, which as somebody who produced podcasts and developed them for 10 years, I've never been able to do in 6 weeks. That's crazy. That never happens. And so Sid contributed 2 of those episodes. And yeah, it was really funny because he we were emailing back and forth, and he was like, "Oh yeah, so I wrapped up my first interview," and I was like, "Wait, what? Wait, we haven't started. Wait." And then I was like, "Man, I'm gonna have to tell this kid that we can't use the story because the audio is gonna be, and he hasn't learned to interview yet." And then what proceeded was the most pristine series of questions. Like I felt like fully schooled on doing interviews. So anyway, it was really great. Okay, so I'm gonna hand this down to our next person.
Hey, this is your host Nadia jumping in with some quick context about my own piece. As you know, this program was an audio intensive, but I'm stubborn and I had a video idea in my head that I really wanted to pursue. So I decided to go rogue and make a video essay instead. You'll hear a little excerpt of that video right now, but trust me, it's way better and funnier and I think less awkward to actually watch it. I'll link to it down in this episode's show notes so you can check it out. Hi, my name is Nadia Ahmed. I wanted to do my piece on, mine's about internet conflict. A lot of times when people talk about the internet, it's adults talking about it in like terrible ways and making it seem like, oh, these kids are spending too much time on the internet. But I feel like nobody ever really focuses on the solutions. And I feel like that nobody's really focused on how we could be doing better and how we could be communicating better, but they're focused on demonizing it. So it was inspired by seeing arguments on the internet and seeing how insane they would get. People argue about really stupid things on the internet. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that, and I'll just let you see my piece. The internet. You could say it's integral to our lives. We use it to learn new things, navigate, inspire, and arguably the most important, stay connected with each other. In a world where we are becoming increasingly more divided, the internet has given us a way to stay together. But it's also changing how we communicate with each other. I talked to Dr. Amit Kumar, who's an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Texas, and he wrote a study called It's Surprisingly Nice to Hear From You, and I'll speak more about it, obviously, in the video, so you'll have to watch it. But thank you. But basically his research was about how we choose media that we choose forms of communication that we think will be easier, like texting, but they're not actually allowing us to have better connections, and we can't solve our conflicts over text because of so many reasons, and so much nuance is lost over text. So it kind of I kind of learned a lot from this. I learned a lot from him, speaking to him especially because I learned just how flawed it is to deal with conflicts over text.
Hi, I'm Sho Ferguson. You can call me Sho or Fergie, although I think I like Fergie more, but I'm working on that. It's very nice to meet you all. My story, may I ask, how many of you have a garden? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you don't. How many do you guys know where your plants come from, evolutionarily? What country, what continent did they grow on and evolve on? Does anyone know? And that's a problem. Do you guys know what a native garden is? Yes, you, tall one who's related to me. Yes, exactly. I wonder who taught you that. They must be amazing. And I got to interview this lovely woman out in Hampton, Virginia, at her native plant nursery, Watermark Woods, because I want for everyone here to know what a native garden is and know why we need it to conserve biodiversity and protect the planet and protect like our livelihoods. And also, frankly, don't you just want to see butterflies in your yard? So, I did my best to collect some tips and tricks. And I hope you enjoy the little clip you're going to see here and the podcast you're all going to go listen to later.
People come in all the time and they'll tell us, I planted milkweed and now I have monarchs, or, I planted pipevine and now I have pipevine swallowtails, which we've never seen before. We have had people come in with kind of the opposite stories, which have been interesting. They bought a plant at Home Depot. They came home and planted it. The next morning they came out. There's a hummingbird right over there. See him on the Monarda.
Oh my God.
Went to visit something else. And they come home, they plant their plant from Home Depot, and the next day, underneath the plant, all dead bees, because they use pesticides. And so those pesticides go into the plant, and it kills the pests, which Home Depot or larger growers think are the bees or, caterpillars that are going to eat holes in the leaves. And people don't want bees. We was with my husband the other day picking up mulch at Home Depot, and, we were looking at all the plants out there. There's not a single insect hanging around those plants.
That is a red flag.
Yeah.
I think maybe a good metaphor is it's the same thing with like straight people dating. If your boyfriend who's a guy has no friends who's a girl, no friends who are girls, that is a huge red flag. That is a huge red flag because that means they may not be able to be friends with you. So like same thing with bugs. If a plant has no bugs around it, that means it's not friendly.
Right.
I know there's often this concept in our culture of wildlife is dangerous and, it's an evil and it's a monster and it's a beast in the woods. And oh no, it will steal your Ferrari and take it for a joyride. How accurate do you find that sentiment?
Well, it's, they were all here first, right? We're squatters on nature's land, and, we have to live harmoniously with nature because we can't live without nature, but nature can live without us. So if humans disappeared, nature would be just fine. It would recover, it would be better off. But if nature were to disappear, so would humans. We can't survive without nature.
Oh my God, clapping. I also wanted to say that I think that stuff like this, the things we're creating now, here and now, it's incredibly important to live where you live, not live everywhere else in the world where you cannot change things. We can change things here. We can't change things necessarily in DC, in California, but we can change things here. And we can make a difference in our own territory, place, our home. We live here now. We don't live anywhere else. This place is beautiful, and there are so many amazing, intelligent, thoughtful people here. And I want to hear every one of those people's voices, personally.
Hi, I'm Maddie, and I'm currently at the beach. But so around the time the first week of our internship, we were kind of throwing around ideas and looking for sources. And like the weekend before the internship started, I was doing some activism for type 1 diabetes on the Hill. And from that, we kind of came up with the question of if a teen or someone my age in high school wants to get involved with politics or their local government, how can they get involved and help make changes and decisions in their community? And so that's what my podcast is about. And I met this man who works with the county board right now, but he started working with local government when he was at Yorktown. So he told us his advice and his story. And that's what my podcast is about.
Half the battle truly is showing up, and you will find that there are a lot more folks who want to be encouraging and supportive than you might expect. And so my advice is to, even when you feel discouraged and like you're not being heard, continue to show up and continuing to make your voice heard, even if it seems like the people in the room don't want to hear it, because there are more people than you might think that do want to hear your voice.
It's often said that young folks are the ones who will inherit the country, but despite that, politics are dominated by adults. Some of today's most pressing issues, from censorship and school curriculum to mental health and trans rights, directly impact teens, so it makes sense that they should have an input on their government and community. If a teen identifies a problem in the Arlington community, how can they get involved in the local government to address this issue? I'm Maddie Hawkins, and this is the Arlington AMP podcast. In my quest to answer this question, I was able to sit and chat with Graham Weinschenk. Graham grew up in Arlington and first got involved in the local government while at Yorktown High School, and has continued ever since. We talked about his experiences and advice for teens in Arlington who want to get involved today.
Okay, so Graham told me this really interesting story of when he was a junior and a senior. He got really interested in sex education. So he went up to Richmond to talk before the Board of Education in Virginia about talking about sex education. And like his entire AP Gov class was watching it, and he had this really passionate speech. And then afterwards, pretty much everyone that was like on the board was like, "You are so brave for being a teenager. you are really making an impact, you're amazing. And then they proceeded to vote against him, every single one of them. And I feel like that story was really impactful for him and then also listeners, just because it shows that people are going to doubt you and it's going to be hard to make a difference and make a change. But like Graham, you just have to keep pushing and eventually people will hear you. And so he kind of talks about that in my podcast.
Okay, so my story is about this initiative in northern Arlington called Plan Langston Boulevard. About 2012, some community members around that Langston Boulevard corridor, not necessarily on the road, they felt like there were some problems with their neighborhood. It hadn't seen enough investment in a long time, and they wanted to come together and do something about that. So they formed, eventually, this group called Langston Boulevard Alliance that came up with this plan from the input of the community members, and eventually, started working with Arlington to try to get this plan adopted. If you've ever been on Langston Boulevard, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, it used to be called Lee Highway. It is not meant for people walking. It's not comfortable to walk, not safe to walk or drive, and it's very wide and loud, and there's not a lot to see or do along it, despite there being a lot of small businesses that the community members would like to see succeed still. And this initiative was kind of meant to address that. So when I discovered this, I was, immediately hooked. I am really fascinated, especially lately, by city urban planning, street design. Transparently, I am very pro, high density, walkable streets. So that was my stake in this, but it's a very contentious plan. Even though it was created largely by these community members, there's still a lot of disagreements over how it should be executed, and then there's other people that maybe aren't being included in the conversation so much. So that's what my story explores, is how this process works of creating this plan, who's involved in the decision making and the consulting. So you'll hear a short clip from one of the residents about her concerns and her thoughts on getting feedback from people.
My name is Wilma Jones. I'm on the executive board of the John M. Langston Citizens Association, representing the Halls Hill Highview Park neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood pretty much my entire life, and I'm actually a fourth-generation resident of the neighborhood. My great-grandmother came there in the early 1900s, so my family's been there for a long time.
Wilma Jones told me she feels like her historically black neighborhood, Halls Hill, is being asked to bear too much of the load of the county's affordable housing goals and building heights compared with other neighborhoods along the corridor.
And we want other neighborhoods to step up, and until they have the same levels of density of affordable housing in their neighborhoods, we want them to stop adding affordable housing to our neighborhood. And it appears that the county staff is taking direction from people who don't live in our neighborhood, and they're telling them to be more bold and aggressive about the heights, and we have a major issue with that.
Speaking as someone who doesn't live along the boulevard and who is actively interested in this bolder approach, those words were hard for me to swallow. But I also get it. Wilma Jones has spent the past decade working on engaging the community and preserving the rich history of her neighborhood, which was once separated from the white neighborhood next to it by a segregation wall. Who am I to tell her what her community should look like? It makes sense that these residents want to control how their neighborhood will look and feel, especially with all the time and effort they have put in. At the same time, I started to feel like there were other voices and interests I wasn't hearing from in this room. There was nobody there speaking on behalf of people like me, People who are already preparing ourselves to deal with the environmental consequences of our country's obsession with cars, or the housing affordability crisis we are already seeing because of our region's utter inability to build enough housing stock for all the people who want to live and work here. I wasn't hearing from any of the future adults who might want to live along Langston Boulevard in 30 years when this plan comes to fruition. It's not just a question of what the corridor will look and feel like, it's also a question of who and how many will have access to it.
I wanted to pop in here really quickly about Cody's story. And one of the things that was really interesting about this process, Cody came out swinging hard with like, I want to do a multi-source story. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, that's going to be really hard. And but it was just, that was what he was interested in. He really wanted to do this explainer. Then got into the reporting, and we started really trying to explore like what the story was about. And Cody has really strong strong opinions about this. And so we kind of like really had to figure that out. And so it was tricky wrestling with this tape. And I just want to say that I think Cody probably accomplished some of the more nuanced writing I've ever seen from anybody on this topic. So I'm really excited for you to hear that work. And all of, I'm really excited for you to hear all the rest of these.
Hey, it's Nadia again. Quick note, one of my fellow interns in our summer program did this really excellent story, but she didn't really want her name out there, so for privacy purposes, we've bleeped it out. Okay, back to the episode.
There is one student who was unable to make it this evening, but I wanted to play some of her work as well, because I'm also really proud of it. So some of you know the county has a new program to distribute Narcan at high schools and stuff, and train students to carry Narcan around, this life-saving opioid blocker. I would like anybody here who go to Wakefield want to talk about why that is?
So during this past school year, and very sadly, there was a kid who passed away from an overdose at our school, and it was during the school day. And it was very sad, and there's been an effort to pass out Narcan and teach students how to administer Narcan so that in the future, if anything like this ever happens again, hopefully that there can be an effort made by other peers and other students to support them and possibly save a life.
Yeah, I mean, personally, as someone who goes to Wakefield, this is an all-around problem, and it goes back into what Maddie's story was about with the lack of representation of students in school and how that leads to situations where there is an unfair burden put on the student that they cannot amend because they have no power over the system. But I know a lot of people. I have a friend who overdosed. The kid who died was in my art class. There was a very, and there was also a thing with a shooter or like a false alarm shooter. I don't know what happened there a week later, and that's a whole other story. Ask me sometime. It's a whole thing. But it was really traumatic, and it was really traumatic for a lot of my friends. And these have ripple effects. Someone I know, tried to hurt themselves very badly. But Narcan can save a life. And, it's the bare minimum. It's the least you can do. And that's why this story is important.
Thank you. I felt like that was kind of more important to hear from them, for sure. So just to set up the story, came in to track the story with me. Tracking is where the students record their narration, where they set up what was happening in the story. And she has been editing videos since she was pretty little. And so she's a very good editor, and she was shockingly good with the tracking and pulled it together unbelievably quickly. And then she emailed me the next day and she was like, I want to do it all over again. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And she was like, no, I was trailing off in some takes and I just want to do it all over again. And I couldn't understand it because it was like very good. It was very good. Like I'd seen her full assembly that she had magically assembled very quickly. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. No, I mean, you did it really fast. So I trust you're going to get it done. And she came in and we were doing the takes and I was like, why are you doing it differently. And she said, I just want to make sure that I get it. I'm afraid to say something wrong. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she's like, I'm afraid to say something. I'm afraid that if I trail off in my words and I say something wrong and somebody hears it, then maybe they'll just think the wrong thing about Narcan and they won't do it, or they won't understand, or they'll think it's dangerous, or they'll think you'll get in trouble, or they won't understand. I'm afraid. And so I want to record it again just to make sure that it sets it up exactly the right way so that people want to do it. Is interested in public health and all sorts of things like that, and goes to Wakefield. So I just so we're gonna play that. To set this up, spoke to a master Narcan trainer as a local Arlingtonian, decided to volunteer for free for the county and just do it, and is now trained thousands of people in how to do this, and was really a big part of getting this into the high schools. And so sat down and basically did like a Zoom Narcan training with him, and that was part of the interview. And so this is coming out of that demo.
Stigma is what kills in all sorts of things, right? Stigma kills if you don't, you're not quite like everybody else and you're a little bit different and you get bullied and stuff like that. So the stigma about, only those kind of people use drugs. But unfortunately, with the synthetic fentanyl, a lot of it's pressed into these pills that look exactly like pain relievers you would get from a dentist when you get your braces on, or your wisdom teeth pulled out, or the emergency room when you break your ankle in a soccer practice or something like that. They look exactly like the real pills. And so the key point is to understand about breaking down stigma is that anyone can die from an opioid overdose. You don't have to be that kind of person who does those things. The only thing that motivates me is keeping people alive. If people are alive, they can go to treatment. If they're alive, they can celebrate their sweetheart's birthday. If they're alive, they can wake up in the morning and get a kiss. If they're alive, they can do anything. If they're not alive, they can't do any of that stuff. And so I don't care how the person got to where they're at. I just want to give them the tools so they can keep themselves alive. And then that's the way to kind of break down stigmas. You get people to understand it's not about drugs, it's about keeping people alive.
Claps for I've befriended Northern Virginia's WAMU's only Northern Virginia reporter. She's a really, really wonderful reporter that's doing beautiful work. The thing that she said was that when she got into this job, she thought she was going to be reporting like 90% local politics, 10% schools. And she's like, it's 90% schools, 10% whatever else. Because these high schoolers are the politics. They are the political, every single political flashpoint that's happening right now, or very nearly everyone, from opioids to birth control to trans rights to, oh my God, guns to literally just name all the things. They affect high schoolers, what our cities and our community is going to look like, climate change, whether our species is going to survive. These are issues that high schoolers are going to be dealing with. They are the stakeholders. Why are their voices not more in this conversation? So anyway, I just story really made that strike home for me, and it just kind of made me, the lack of local news in this country is ripping us apart. The lack of local storytelling in this country is ripping us apart. And it's truly scary that we have lost the ability to look around at each other and talk to each other. And so one of the things that just motivated me this entire time was watching them do this and watching them ask some of the smartest, coolest questions and say some of the smartest, coolest things. And I wrote a thing last night that I hope is not incomprehensible, but I was like, if we want to survive as a country, we as individuals have got to figure out what matters to us as human beings. We have to figure out what our secret superpowers are, what specific stories we have to tell. We've got to also get really good at claiming the space to tell them. And also, if we want to survive as a country, we as a community need to get really, really good at listening to the stories of the other people around us, other people who we share this world with. And we especially need to get good at that with people who disagree with us. And we need to be ready for those stories to surprise us and make us curious and change our perspective and change our minds. Okay, with that, I'm going to open up to questions. I would like, or reflections from the students or anyone else. I'll give the mic to them, and then we'll wait here if there are questions.
Yeah, go for it.
It's okay. Just
I'll project it.
So the question was, have we, after going through this internship, do we experience the news stories like on the radio or TV, I guess, differently now? Do we notice different things in that? Is that fair? Okay. For me, the primary thing is it gives me a newfound appreciation for how much work goes into it. You know, Kristen said, Cody wanted to go into a multi-source story because that's what, I've listened to and enjoyed most on NPR. That's the kind of focus I wanted to have. And I had no idea how much work would go into it, reaching out to all the sources, preparing interview questions. During the interview, there's a lot you have to think about also. And then putting it together was probably the hardest part. I'm on draft 9 now. So that would be the primary thing for me, is every time I hear, a succinct bit of some interview source talking, I realized that there's 10 minutes of audio that wasn't used behind that.
I'm going to short stop here and then maybe pass to someone else. What I have learned from just working in audio and thinking about how to tell the story respectfully and responsibly, is that you don't go in yelling. You don't go in saying, breaking news, child died by crushed minivan. You start with, hey, there seems to be a lot of accidents at this traffic stop. What's the deal with that? You start with kindness and lead with thought. You don't go in guns a-blazing and you're not out to make money. That's not good journalism. Anyways, please watch PBS instead. Or better yet, Ames news station.
So mine, my project was definitely, I used to listen to NPR with my mom in the car, and she would play it. And I remember being interested by the stories, but most of what I watched primarily was YouTube stuff, and that really, when I was younger, I wanted to be a YouTuber, and it shaped how I thought about media. So for that type of content, it changed how I consume it, because now I like watching video essays. So now when I watch them, I'm like, oh my God, I know how much time they spent editing. I know they probably did this much research. They probably had spent hours researching too. And then how do they make their setups? How do they do this? What happens behind the scenes? So definitely more thought as to the amount of time that goes into it and what happens behind the scenes. And it's definitely made me dissect the content more. Which is a little bit annoying, but it's also interesting. So yeah.
I feel like all those were summed up perfectly. My take on this would be a bit different. I didn't listen to radio or audio stories that much, or I don't normally. I'm much more of a print person. I read newspapers, I read articles, and with this program or with this internship, I building off of what Nadia just said, it made me understand the structure of a story a lot more. When we read an article, there's a bit of exposition, or there's a bit of info, and then there's one source or multiple sources, and there's one distinct soundbite that they take or that they have in quotes. And it always made sense to me, the story flows perfectly, but I never understood how or why the reporter did certain aspects. But I feel like with this program and with Miss Kristen's help, we were able to delve really deep into what makes an article a story. How do people connect with articles? How do people connect with stories? And how to get those like distinct sound bites, that really break down the core issue that you're talking about in one sentence or two sentences that people can understand, and that they don't need to like delve into like the whole history behind a topic or behind an issue.
Yeah, I guess I do a lot of creative writing, and so when I listen to podcasts and just news in general, I guess I kind of didn't realize how much of a story it also is. And so this experience really, kind of like what Sid was saying, it made me realize how you still have a narrative and you still have a story and characters. And so you just have to, for every minute of audio that you have, there's another two that you don't include. So it made me realize how much effort people put into making it a story and helping people process the information we want to get across.
The other thing I just realized that maybe I should have said is it made me realize how much control the journalist has over the message. It can be dangerous, and you have to be careful that you're being ethical and you're portraying everything in a fair way, and that's different from not taking a position. But now I pay a little bit more attention when I'm reading stuff or listening to stuff to be skeptical. Not that it might necessarily be factually untrue, but the journalist has all the power to frame how the interviewee sounds, and how what the theme, what the message, the takeaway is.
I really just kind of need to quickly say, just all of your kids, thank you so much. This experience has been so rich, and they're the biggest lesson that I got from this is like, they've got it. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to figure it out like 100 billion times better than if you had imposed it on them. Like they're smarter than me, and it's beautiful. And so anyway, and they're just so individually smart in like just shockingly cool ways. I'm not going to gush right now, but probably when we go out there, we can hit me up and I will gush for like 12 minutes about your kid. So we'll do that. But just really unique. Oh, cool minds. Yeah. Yeah, do it.
I come into work pretty much every day. And I see you guys over here like, around noon, and you guys were just like in the middle of your thing. And I didn't get to hear anything that you guys were doing. I didn't really see any of the videos you made, but like just the work you guys are doing is fantastic. And yeah, it's really inspiring to see people so young doing stuff like this. So the world is in good hands,
Yeah, the world is in really good hands. Like really good hands. So we're kind of at this cool moment now where we get to decide where we go from here. And so we did 2 rounds of this, and now I'm trying to figure out like, okay, how do we make this sustainable? How do we do this? And so if you appreciate what we did here, I'm wondering if you can just think about one thing, if it's an introduction you can make, a connection to like, you should collaborate with these guys over there, they're doing something really smart, or I want to volunteer to be a part of this and support it in some way, or I know somebody with so much money, and I'm gonna show them this video. Just they have so much money and they just don't even know what to do with it, and they just want to money bomb us because this is very resource intensive. So just making this sustainable and thinking about the future of this organization, whether it is just like finding more wonderful young people to be a part of this program, getting our community involved, letting the county know that you care what we're doing, all of those things matter a whole lot. So before you leave today, I just want you to like silently commit, if this meant something to you, silently commit to like, what are you going to do to help keep this going? Because it's worth keeping going. I really believe it. If you like hearing us talk. Yeah, I would like to hear them talk a lot more. So, yeah. Anyway, okay, so we're done, right? Yes. Thank you so much, all of you. And also thank you to our members, our current members, who are mostly adult people that have been sticking with us, and many of them have built this community from the ground up and stuck with us through the pandemic. And so I just really want to thank the members and volunteers who have kept this place going and kept believing in us, because I hope you see that it's paying off. And what I'm really excited about is maybe getting you all involved in this or things like it, or you can keep doing the wonderful programs you're already making, which are fabulous. Anyway, so thank you so much. I'm going to stop talking because I'm sleep deprived. Thank you, everybody. Really, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for listening to the Arlington AMP podcast. I'm Nadia Ahmed. Listen, if you like what you heard this season on the podcast, please help us get the word out. If you go into your podcast app, you can subscribe and follow the Arlington AMP. And even better, it's really helpful if you rate us 5 stars and maybe even leave us a review. Another way you can help is, money. We'll leave a link for you to support our work right down below in the show notes. We'll also link to anything and everything else you'd want to know about us, including a link to my hilarious and brilliant video about the internet. Music in this episode was provided by Blue Dot Sessions. The Arlington AMP is a student-led production from Arlington Independent Media's Youth Journalism Initiative. To join us or to support our local reporting work here in Arlington, visit www.arlingtonmedia.org.